Lindsay McRae. I am the Operations Manager with Healthcare Improvement Scotland Community Engagement, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon. Before we start, just some housekeeping. It's great to see all the people, all the video cameras on the screen at the minute. What we would ask, if possible, can you turn your camera off for just now? The reason for that is sometimes it can affect the bandwidth just when there's lots of people on the call. So if possible, please can you turn off your camera, and what we'll do is we'll leave the actual main speakers will be up on screen. What we'll do, we'll have a Q&A question and answer time at the end of the webinar today, and if you'd like to ask a question, you can put your camera back on again so we can see you, but if you're able to keep it off for the meantime, that would be great. Thank you. So as I say, welcome to our webinar today about engaging with Gypsy traveller communities. I'm really pleased to have Gillian and Virginia here with us today to share their experiences, and I'll ask them in a couple of minutes to just introduce themselves and to kick off. This is an hour-long session today, but it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. We're not going to have any slides. It's going to be just a conversation. So we will not have any slides to share after today's session. What we will do is we're recording the webinar today, and we will make that available on our website later if you would like to rewatch the session or indeed share it with any colleagues or friends who may be interested in it. This is one of a series of webinars that we do on a monthly basis, looking at engaging with communities to help shape health and care services in Scotland. So if you're interested in joining us, please look on our website. We've got an upcoming program, and we will update that on a regular basis, and they're all free to join, so please, the more the merrier. We'd love to see you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Gillian and Virginia, and just to say actually that please use the chat box as we go through. If you've got comments or questions to ask, please put them in the chat box on the way, and we'll pick those up at the end, at the Q&A at the end. But I'll hand over now to Gillian and to Virginia.
Hi, I'm Gillian Ventura, the Engagement Officer within the Community Engagement Directorate for Healthcare Improvement Scotland, and I'm based here in Lanarkshire. Virginia, do you want to say hi?
Hi, my name is Virginia Francis. I am a Gypsy traveller living in South Lanarkshire, and been doing a lot of stuff for Gillian, trying to engage with the community and stuff and move forward with that. So hi to everybody.
Thank you. So, like most of us, I'm currently working from home, navigating the trials and tribulations of work, school and college. I'm a single parent. I've got two teenage girls, 18 and 15, so we'll not say any more about that. Apart from they are both still alive, so that's good under the circumstances. I've worked in this role through many guises over the past 27 years. I'm a bit of a creature of habit, so I could be regarded as a real Kent face. I started my career as secretary to the then chief officer of the local health council. She was quite a formidable character. I was administrator in the Lanarkshire Health Council, moved to be local officer, and now currently engagement officer within my role within the directorate. Today I'd like to share my journey working with the Gypsy travelling community of Lanarkshire. We'll talk about the benefits of meaningful engagement, the barriers that we've overcome, the relationships that we have made, and how we have gone full circle in those relationships. And for me, that's actually been the best part, but we'll touch on that at the end. I'm going to do my best to give you an insight into the people and the culture. And to help me do that, Virginia has joined me today. Tommy was also coming along, but he's had to call off last minute due to health reasons. So we wish him a speedy recovery. I will be referring to Tommy throughout my presentation, as they have both been key in helping me build the relationships. Virginia will later share real life stories from their experience of accessing health and social care. But for me today, it's mostly about networking. I know there are people on here today who work with the community on a daily basis, which is great, and I'd encourage you to share any of your experiences too that would help us all work together in moving forward. You'll get the opportunity to share any stories. You can currently do it in the comments box, or we'll open up at the end with a Q&A. I also know there'll be people on the call today who have never had the privilege of engaging with the community, and today I hope you get the biggest insight and networking opportunity to do just that within your own area. As a directorate, we have lots of tools and resources that are available for you to access, and all links will be shared throughout the webinar or at the end. We're also currently developing resources on meaningful engagement with the Gypsy Traveller community. This resource will be due to be launched in June time to coincide with the Gypsy Roma Travelling History Month. There you go, that's you tied in, Richard, no getting out of it now. So if you would like to help develop and shape this resource, please get in touch with either myself or Richard McRae. Before we get started today, I would like to take a wee minute and ask you a question. This might sound a bit odd, but I don't actually want the answer to your question, and I don't want you to share it in the comments box either. I would like you to keep a thought of it for your own reflection. You might want to write it down or just keep it in your head, but please don't share it. I want it to be a safe, respectful place for us all. When you hear or see the words Gypsy Traveller, what is the first thought, feeling or emotion that comes to you, and how does it make you feel? So a couple of minutes just to have a couple of seconds to have a wee thought, but please don't share it, and we will go back to that thought at the end of the webinar. The role of Healthcare Improvement Scotland is to support health and care providers to deliver better quality care for everyone in Scotland. The Community Engagement Directorate contributes to this role by supporting the engagement of people and communities in shaping health and care services across Scotland. A lot of these communities are easily accessible and very willing to be involved and share their thoughts on how services could be delivered. However, there are lots of groups and cultures out there that are not as easily accessible, nor are they as trusting and willing to engage. Today, I'm not going to be sharing about any improvements or changes that I've made or input to the community, but to tell you of the story of the relationship that's been developed, and for you to appreciate the time, the patience and empathy required for meaningful engagement with this community. But before we go on to share my story, I would like to run a short clip explaining the history behind the Gypsy, Roma and Travelling community.
Sorry to interrupt there. Is there supposed to be sound?
Yeah, I don't have any sound either, Stu.
If you unshare and then when you go to share, make sure when you share content, it's got sound on.
Yeah, I think there was an issue when I started sharing it. I'll just try that again and we'll see what happens. Apologies for that, everyone.
Still no sound. Your mute's on as well. Stuart, would that make any difference?
No, my muting shouldn't make a difference. I'm sharing it in the same way I was sharing the housekeeping video earlier, Jules. So I don't have a.
Do you want to give one more try, and then we can just put the link in the comments for people to check it later?
Okay, here we go. Last chance.
Okay.
No, I think it's not working this time yet, Stu.
Okay, so I'm not sure what's happening there. It's definitely coming through my computer, and I've got the computer sound ticked, so just have to share that in there.
Okay, no worries, that's fine. The clip gives you a wee bit of background and understanding of where the names and the culture and the language of the community come from. So you should take a wee look. It's only a few minutes long. So back in 2018, my colleague and I were looking to engage with some groups that we hadn't engaged with before. We did a small mapping exercise and agreed that we would reach out to the local travelling community. We wanted to establish what their issues were, whilst accessing health services and what actually mattered to them. We knew where the local settled site was, but even we recognised that we couldn't just rock up and chap a caravan door. If I'm honest, we were apprehensive about this engagement work. This was unknown territory and we didn't know the culture, how responsive they would be. Did they even want to engage? We had absolutely no idea. Prior to establishing the link and that inroad that we needed, we thought we would ask colleagues across Scotland if anyone had had any experience, and if so, could they share any hints and tips as to the best approach. We drew a bit of a blank there. Many had tried, but had been pretty unsuccessful. Our first point of contact was with the site manager of the Larkcall site. Roy was fab. He took the time to meet with Helen and I and explained a bit about the Gypsy Traveller community and what we might come up against. And to give Roy his due, he was keen not to speak on their behalf and wanted us to engage direct to get the information that we were looking for. There are around 20,000 Gypsy travellers living in Scotland. Among them are groups as diverse as Romany Gypsy, Scottish Gypsy travellers, Irish travellers, European Roma. They all consider travelling and a nomadic identity as an important part of their traditional and contemporary culture. Recognised in law as a distinct ethnic group, they also have the worst health outcomes of any of the ethnic groups, primarily due to poverty and discrimination. They typically live 10 to 12 years. In fact, I actually came across another stat that was 10 to 25 years less than non-Gypsy traveller people. They have higher rates of anxiety and depression. Their suicide rate's 6 times higher than the general population, and this increases to 7 times for younger travelling men. Infant mortality is 3 times higher, with around 42% of Gypsies and travellers are affected by a long-term condition compared to 18% of the general population. People from the Gypsy traveller backgrounds also engage later with health services and can often experience barriers accessing primary care as a result of living in unauthorised areas or moving so frequently, having low levels of literacy and experiencing discriminatory attitudes. I'm sure you'll all agree that they're quite startling stats, but we know that behind every statistic there's a person who would benefit from quality health and care provision. The key for us accessing the site and helping support the community has been through Roy, linking us with the Keep Well nursing team. The work the nursing team has carried out has also been vital, simply by carrying out health checks, monitoring blood pressure, diabetes, etc. And they had built an amazing rapport with the community. At first, it was just the women from the site who went along and had all the checks done. The second time I had gone on the site, the men were actually coming along and saw the benefits as well, and that was a huge culture shift for the men in the site. These checks gave us the opportunity to piggyback onto these sessions and ask the questions around things like realistic medicine and what actually mattered to you. This is not a quick job. Gypsy travellers enjoy and are proud of how they live. It's the discrimination and lack of respect and resource that they get annoyed about the most. The lack of understanding from non-travellers can make it harder to engage with them, and they think, why should this time be any different? Building relationships, persevering, and most importantly, understanding their culture will over time pay off, ensuring better health and social care, not just for this community, but for everyone using local healthcare services. And at a time when the Gypsy traveller culture was being most compromised due to lack of site provision, it was really important to me that their voices were heard. Then along came COVID and lockdown and reshaped emergent care. So from 2018 until March 2020, I had made slow progress with the community. Yes, I had engaged and interviewed on a couple of occasions during those 2 years, but it was only on a couple of occasions. However, what I did realise was that not only did this community have issues accessing health services that are unique to them, they also have issues accessing health services the same as you and I. So it was good for me and for them to realise that often it is a challenge to get an appointment when you call your surgery on the day, or when you finally get that appointment, that you're only allocated a few minutes time to chat. This happens to us all regardless of race, religion or community. However, what did happen for me was being on holiday, having forgotten my medication, no prescription, and I went along to a local pharmacy. Gave them all my details, they phoned my surgery back home, and within 10-15 minutes I left the pharmacy with my medication while I was on holiday. That's not so easy for a traveller, and one chap in particular travelled from Newcastle to Larkhall to visit his family, did the same as myself, left without his meds, went to the local chemist and was refused any assistance, far less replacement medication. He had to then travel back home to Newcastle, pick up his medication and come back to Scotland to enjoy the rest of his visit. This is just one of the examples that they sadly face. I don't really want to labour on the negative stories, but I think it's important to recognise that they happen. It's also important to recognise that there's an education needed on both sides to understand how the systems work, as well as having the voice of the Gypsy traveller heard. Some parts of their culture and belief need to be understood and respected from the healthcare professional. And I suppose what I'd like to think about today also is, how do we do that? Having discussed these issues with others who work with the community daily, I learned that a lot of the issues this community face is due to the fact of lack of ethnic information being held. It's just not recorded. They're never actually asked for their ethnicity. This is now slowly but surely being addressed. Again, a huge education and learning from this one question. Will the Gypsy traveller be offended to be asked, or in fact scared to divulge that information for fear of prejudice? Will the person asking be trained enough to understand why they're asking the question and ask it with confidence and no trepidation for fear of reprisal? How would you or I, if you're a non-traveller person, feel about being asked that question in your surgery or wherever you might be? Are you a Gypsy traveller? How would that land with you? But the information and knowledge that could be gained from being aware of these stats can only be a good thing for both the NHS and the Gypsy traveller community. So, just as I'm making friends, you'll be wishing that video played, you'll be sick of listening to me. So just as I'm making friends, along comes COVID and lockdown, as I mentioned. And along with that came a Scottish Government request for a piece of work on reshaping urgent care and to engage with those that the service may negatively impact upon, given the digital first aspect as well, of course. I instantly thought about Virginia and Tommy, but knew I had no way of contacting them as the clinics were not taking place, not just because of COVID, but due to a lack of resource and a change of provision on the site. The meetings that we attended together were all on the back burner. So as much as I had emails for them both, I had never actually contacted them direct. And I honestly did worry that the wee inroad that I had made could be wasted by my audacity to actually contact them directly. In hindsight, this was more my issue than theirs, as they were both delighted to be involved. They both took part in the initial interviews, and Tommy actually took the time to have a second interview with me to feed back what his thoughts were on the whole experience for my own learning. I've learned a lot from engaging with the community. I've learned to be patient. I've learned that my ignorance to their culture and the questions I ask does not offend them. They want you to know what life is like for them. Another wee example is Tommy will happily tell you that there's appointments regarding his partner with health issues that he just won't attend because the men just don't do that, and that's just how it is. So before I bring Virginia in, you'll be glad to hear, I'm going to shut up now. Would like to try and show you another wee clip. This is from a young traveller's perspective. Good luck with this one, Stu. Hopefully this one will play.
I'm going to try it this time, so
Okay, good luck.
hold on to your hats.
No gypsies allowed. No travellers allowed. It's a sign that we still see. Is it right that my people are still banned from shops like dogs? I'm David Donaldson, I'm 20 years old and I'm a Scottish traveller. Not many people know this, but we've been in Scotland for over 1,000 years. We have our own language, our own culture and our own customs. So why then do we still experience prejudice and racism in 2018? Travellers in Scotland are faced with signs banning them from shops, from restaurants, from pubs. We're regularly told that we're not allowed to access facilities like swimming pools because of who we are. Many of our words from our language have made their way into the settled community slang. Words like chavvy, words like gadget. Those words are used to describe dirt. So why are our words always synonymous with dirt? And why are we as a people always put in a place where we're synonymous with dirt? I want to challenge the everyday ignorance that exists. I want to challenge people using terms like tinky and minky. Describing tea as tinky, describing someone who's dirty as a tink or a mink is extremely offensive to me and my people, but people still think it's acceptable. I'd make the conscious effort to hide who I am, make the conscious effort to maybe look different, to talk different. When I'm in the shops, young travellers were just kind of taught to accept racism and prejudice. I know of travellers who've taken their own lives, who have completely disassociated themselves with the culture entirely because they're terrified that they won't be allowed to get a job, they won't get into school. There's a huge issue with people not looking at other cultures, not looking at other ways of being. Traveller culture, yeah, it's very distinct and it's very different to what many people might see as a way they would want to live. They might not understand it, they might not understand why we want to go and live in a caravan in the middle of a car park, when actually we're living in that car park because one of our ancient camps has been shut down. We're forced to live there because there's nowhere else to go. But instead of people working with us to open those camps and to talk to us, understand our culture and the issues that we face, they would rather quickly write on Facebook that the gypsies or the pikeys have moved into the car park. I like that my culture's been here for a very, very long time. I like that when I sit on a camp, knowing that my family stayed on that camp consistently every single year for the past 400 or 500 years. I like being able to sit next to an elderly member of the community and hear a story that's been passed down orally for centuries. I like being able to hear a ballad that's been retained in our community since the 1200s. As a traveller, I don't like the sense of being stuck. I don't like the idea of a 9-to-5 job. I don't like the idea of working for somebody. I don't like the idea of living in a bricks and mortar house and that's me for the rest of my days and I'll get my pension and live in a house forever. I don't like that. I like the idea of being able to move, being able to be free, being able to get in touch with the way that my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents all lived. Being able to be nomadic and being able to redesign how I see a traveller in contemporary society by using this history, building on this history, but also having the opportunities that everyone else has is really important to me. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Did that work? I hope it did.
Yeah, that was good. I think hearing it from a young person's perspective as well just reinforces what life's like. They through generation, they just don't want to lose their culture and how they live. So we're going to move on to some questions now with Virginia. So Virginia, do you want to say anything else, a wee bit more introduction about yourself, or do you want to just move straight to the questions?
No, I'm fine just to move on with the questions, Gillian.
Okie doke. So what matters to you when you're accessing health and care services?
Well, first and foremost, it's being able to access those services, which in so many cases it's not possible. And then once you've accessed the care, the consistency of that care, because of the culture, because of the way that we live, is always very, very difficult. And what, to be fair, just really accessing the services that the settled community, that anybody else can access in a fair way. That's what matters. Do you know what I mean? Most people just want, if they need a doctor, they need to see a doctor. So that's, yeah, being able to access the care.
Yeah. Do you want to give a wee example about what that lack of consistency and what it causes and how detrimental it can be to a traveller's health?
Well, I feel like I'm sort of putting the spotlight, you know, that when you're trying to speak. So basically, lots of travellers, when they're on the move, especially if they need a GP, they'll go to the GP, ask for an appointment. They'll be asked for proof of ID, proof of address. I mean, how do you prove your address when you're perhaps, as the young gentleman on the video just said, perhaps in a car park, on a piece of land, or wherever that may be? How do you prove that that's your address? So that's the first and foremost, that's the biggest barrier that most people face. So what you'll find is lots of travellers will wait until they maybe move back to their, you know, the more settled area for the winter months, etc., before they reach out to a GP again. in that time, it's perhaps been months since the original problem, whatever it is that the seeking help for, has started. So basically, lots of travellers miss out on that early diagnosis because they're unable to access a GP in the area where they're at. So that's pretty major.
So have any of the barriers or the priorities there, have any of those changed, improved, or got worse over time?
They have improved slightly because they're being taken notice of. That's the point. Lots of departments, agencies, etc., yourself included, Gillian, your Public Health Scotland, are starting to recognise the barriers that travellers face, and they've started to do something about it. About the blue card system that I'm going to probably speak about later on a wee bit. So yeah, organisations are recognising that there's a community out there that they have no understanding of. They've not, they've never engaged with them. So it's and lots of travellers like myself are quite willing, to share the information that people like yourself need to move forward. So it's kind of a myth that that travellers are hard to reach, because we're not.
Yeah, because I think that was what I've realised over time, is that you want to be involved, but you just want to live your life the way that you do, and have people respect your culture and accept how you live. In what areas do you come up against the biggest barriers? What healthcare areas do you come up against the biggest barriers?
Generally, it's the GP, and it's quite funny because we've probably all experienced this. It's always the receptionist. So if you can get past the receptionist, it's usually it can be quite helpful. But again, as I say, I'd like to discuss about the blue card system.
Yeah. See, before we go into the blue card system, Virginia, you were telling me about a story, because I think it's important to highlight about the education that I had touched on as well, and that's education for both sides.
Yeah.
So I suppose it comes under the blue card actually that you're about to talk about, but it's about the practice manager or the receptionist not knowing or understanding what your rights are.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of travellers just walk away.
That's right. That's right. The thing is that most people in the general public, they don't know what their rights are, when they're going forward looking for services.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, the receptionist in the GP should know whether I'm entitled to register or get an appointment, or in-house training, front of house. To me, front of house is so important that people know what they're talking about, and know whether people can have that access and what's required for them to have the access that they're looking for. So I feel that there's a lack of information when it all comes to front of house services.
And so the blue card. And
yes, so the blue. I keep talking about the blue card. So the blue card system was something that I'd worked alongside Heather Craig, part of Keep Well, who's fantastic. Absolutely love her. I think she's retired now, but
she has,
Sandra Kelly that's took over her position. So we worked alongside that, and it went to Scottish Government and stuff about the barriers that travellers were facing. So they developed the blue card, which I can't really show anybody, but I do have it here. So I have my blue card. And basically all that is government information that anyone in the UK has the right to register with a GP. Anyone in the UK, regardless of race, religion, etc., have the right to access healthcare. It also states on it that you do not need proof of identity. You do not need proof of address to access these services. However, that's the main barrier that most travellers face when they're seeking help from a GP service or anywhere else. And I'll just share it quickly. I'd shared this with Gillian. There's so many other minority groups as well that face this kind of discrimination. And it's there was a young man that I'd worked with just at Christmas. I mean, we're talking about 2021. We're not talking about 21 years ago. We're talking about present day. And he'd been in prison, and he'd came out, went to his GP, thinking it was still his GP, to get a prescription, was told that he'd been took off the register. So when he asked her what he could do about that, she did tell him, you can re-register. So when he'd asked, right, okay, that's fine, the receptionist says to him, you need to bring proof of identity and proof of address in. So the young man reached out to me, and thankfully I know about the blue card system, so I have that information. And I said to him, listen, go back in, because you don't need that information. You do not need that proof of identity and you don't need the proof of address. The proof of address is the biggest barrier. The young man actually had a passport, so he managed to produce that. The biggest barrier is the proof of address, because unlike the settled community, most travellers, especially if they're not on a council-run site, they don't have what you would call a permanent address. So they don't have a utility bill. They have expenses. They pay for gas, they pay for electricity, but it's not coming in the form of a utility bill. So therefore, it's difficult for them to prove their address. So that's for me, the biggest thing is about the blue card, getting the blue card out there for people to understand their rights. And that's kind of where I'm coming in from, Gillian.
Yeah, and I think it's just to say, Kate Burton had put a comment in there that the blue card system is just for Scotland. It's not a unified card.
That's right.
It's just for Scottish Gypsy travellers.
Yeah, I think, and the thing is as well, though, Gillian, it's people. Obviously, for me, I live in Scotland. It's people from Scotland that I'm speaking about that are still facing these barriers. I mean, I'm not talking about people that live in England or Ireland or wherever. I'm talking about people that live in Scotland.
Yeah. Maybe that's something that the people on the call might want to think about how best we can be sharing the blue cards. How do we get them out there to let both sides know? That's the travelling community who are not aware, and the stakeholders, so that it can be shared and it's known widely.
That's right. Yeah.
So during the pandemic, it was a challenging time for everybody. What do you think the travellers came up against the most during COVID lockdown?
Well, Scottish Government was actually fantastic, to be fair, to give credit where it's due. So what they had done is they'd put in place, they was working with COSLA, and they'd put in place, that asking travellers not to move about, to stay put, and that they were providing them with, sanitation, bin collection, all this stuff. But then there's a two-sided story. So then they were getting hassle from the settled community because they didn't want travellers in the community, and so that was a major. And as always, the lack of provision of sites, etc. So people say, get off the road and go where? Basically, that's what the general cry from travellers were. Get off the roads and go to where? We have nowhere to go. So.
And I suppose if you think about it, if they could provide a stopgap or a place for that transient community during COVID and lockdown, why could that not be resourced, for a longer time or for,
Yeah.
So what do you expect when you engage with organisations like ourselves? So when I come chatting your door and say, can you fill in another questionnaire? Can you come to another workshop?
I think just to be fairly treated, Gillian, to be treated the same as you would treat anybody else. At the same time, understanding that my needs are very different, perhaps from someone that's in the settled community, and understanding that those needs, that's the difference. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Again, like I've said, it's all right if someone needs treatment for a time that's going to last more than 3 months. They will be asked to go back to their own GP, where they live, like where they're registered with. So the consistency of that care starts to fail because they might only be in that area for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. So it's overcoming that problem, that barrier. How do you continue to treat someone if you don't have, there's nowhere for them to live in that area? Do you know what I mean? So.
And that's come back to that continuity care that you mentioned.
That's right. The consistency of any care is vital, isn't it, for people, for the outcomes? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So.
I think it's more valid or more highlighted more when you are on the road and you're moving and your GP might be even south of the border. So, but can just can something be looked at to have a hold on your record, and then, or is it electronic, or I don't know. Yeah. And I don't quite know how far away we are for all of that actually being possible.
I think the thing, Gillian, a lot of the issues there, Gillian, though, as well, that obviously digital inclusion has been an issue for travellers, because again, if you're on the road with your caravan, you don't have Wi-Fi, so it's only going to be probably your mobile phone, whatever internet you've got, and that and stuff. So the digital stuff is a major barrier. It really is. And through the pandemic, everything went online, didn't it? So we kind of transpired into being online within the blink of an eyelid. Myself included. I mean, this is all new to me. I'm learning as I go along. To work the computer and do all the stuff that we need to do. But that's been difficult for a lot of people. And again, like I say, if you're needing care that lasts longer than 3 months, if you're only temporary registered with a GP, they won't offer that care.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I mean, everything's digital. So it sounds like, you know, like it's maybe not as simple as it sounds. Everything's digital. So why can't, you know, people's records be digital? That's basically what I'm asking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what can health and care services do to improve the way that we engage with the travelling community, whether you're settled or whether you're transient as well?
Oh, that's a tough one, Gillian. That's a really tough one.
I know, and I didn't actually. We
You didn't prepare me for that one, yes.
I know. I thought that was quite good for take advantage of your audience being here as well, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just asking the question. You know, one size doesn't fit all. So it's asking the question in your services, does this service fit all? It genuinely doesn't. And again, like I will, you know, echo that. It's not only gypsies and travellers that are ethnic or that have different, you know, different needs and minority groups, etc. You know, I spoke to you, Gillian, obviously on other stuff, and you know, homeless people coming out of prison, all these different issues. You know, that one size service does not fit all. That's yeah.
I think there's loads of things you could chat the whole day.
Yeah,
about.
We could talk all day about stuff.
Everything you come up against.
Yeah.
And it was a shame that Tommy had taken unwell because he's got other stories, and actually he has a really good relationship with his GP.
That's right.
And can tell really good side of it, but he's kind of in the minority with that relationship as well.
Yeah.
So you have a new role, Virginia. You're not just out there being an advocate for the travellers off your own back. So do you want to tell us a wee bit about what you're now up to?
So thanks to MECOP, they took the initiative to recognise, you know, that that we really need to raise up people from within communities to, you know, to advocate and to be community health workers and really understand the issues and the problems that face their own communities, and they've done that. So I am now Virginia Francis community health worker for Gypsy Travellers in South Lanarkshire, and there's 5 of us that are actually gypsies that we're working within our communities, and the support that we've been getting from MECOP is fantastic. They're providing training, they're providing the support, everything that we need to move forward, and the barriers that have started to literally come crashing down within months is amazing. So that's
good.
So yeah, hats off to MECOP, that's all I can say.
I know, that's good.
So yeah,
I think that's where, for me, I had touched in the beginning that our relationship had gone full circle.
That's right.
And how good it was for me when you were actually emailing me saying, can we have a chat? You know, can we network? Can we link in? So that was actually, because very often in my role, I'll go out and engage with people. And yes, we might go back and be able to do something or link a network, but a lot of the time we don't get to close that loop. So that's been really good, especially with a community such as yourself. And really appreciate you coming on here today, because when Tommy left you in the lurch,
Left me in the lurch,
your own, it is a bit like a rabbit caught in headlights. So absolutely appreciate you coming on and leaving me in the lurch.
Well, I'm saying, for me, Gillian, I mean, for me, this is a platform for the job that I'm doing as a community health worker. And I mean, I'm more than willing for anybody that wants to reach out to me, ask questions, email me, phone me, etc. So it's, as I say, I'm more than willing to engage with anybody that really feels the need. So, yeah.
Yeah, good. So you can either link in through me or Richard. We'll get Virginia's details to you if anybody even wanted to chat or pick her brains about anything. So before we finish up, can we just go back and have a wee think about your question, the question that I asked in the beginning, and has that perception or feeling changed any? Again, please don't share. It's just really for your own personal reflection and thoughts. I hope you found that interesting, and if there's anything else, please don't hesitate to contact any of us, and we'll get bags of time for a Q&A now, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Virginia and Gillian, for sharing that. I think it's no mean feat to do a presentation or to have a discussion without things like PowerPoint or things to hide behind, that you're just yourselves in front of the camera. And I think, I hope that you get a chance to look back through the chat afterwards, that the amount of comments that we've had and reflections and love for both of you sharing your experiences and good wishes and congratulations on your role as well, Virginia. I think that's the thing, that it's about not speaking on behalf of communities, but actually giving communities a voice, their own voice, to help, and share their own stories and their own experience. My colleague Gillian has been monitoring the chat box, and I'm going to give her a heads up of a couple of minutes just to pull up some questions or things that people have raised in the chat box. There's also an opportunity at this point to, if you'd like to ask or your comment in person or make a comment, just stick your hand up as Diane has done, and we'll pull you in at that point. I suppose for me, just if I can steal the platform at the minute where I've got the mic, so to speak, I think I'm reflecting on, there's so much there in terms of, I think it's very easy as an outsider to have kind of prejudice or bias or stereotypical views about things, and actually being reminded it's not news that there's no such thing as a homogenous community or a group of people, that everybody is individuals. And actually, when we talk about gypsies and travelers, as people have mentioned in the chat box, there's actually all the other groups and ethnicities and identities that people have within that. And I should have said it at the start, when we today talk about gypsy travelers as a shortcut during this webinar, we of course do not mean to leave out all of the other identities as well. And that's where we will definitely share the video that we weren't able to share at the start, talks a bit more about the history of individual identities, and we will add both of those videos to our website. They're available on YouTube, but we'll link to them on our website afterwards so that you can have a look at those. For me also, it was the reflection about, there are so many factors and things that tie into people's health inequalities, that we think of people just being on the road or moving from place to place, but actually the whole difficulties of accessing services, the misdiagnoses, the sheer health inequalities. People have talked about the statistics earlier on that you'd shared, and how shocking they are in 2022. In one of the richest countries in the world, and that we've still got such inequality for people living, in our communities and among us. So I think there's a lot of challenges that you've highlighted, Virginia, and I think there's a lot of people on the call today who are really keen to share and to be involved with that as well. I'm not going to say any more because I could talk forever. Diane, you had your hand up first, and I'll bring in the other people who've had their hand raised, and then Gillian will come to you.
Hi there.
Diane.
Hi there. I was absolutely delighted to see that the posts for these health workers were up and ready, and everybody was in them, and to get the list of the areas that were covered was fantastic. And what I was going to be really cheeky in asking is that whether some of that work cross into other areas that are currently not listed, like, you were saying, Virginia, about South Lanarkshire's your area, etc. And I'm just wondering if there's any way of doing some cross-regional working in terms of any input to Fife, because we don't have a health worker here. But I'd be really keen to try and to look at trying to get something like that established, or waiting to see what's the outcome of all of this work. But also to utilise what we've got. So the people that are in post at the moment, is there any way that we could do any joint working together?
Hi, Diane. I'm sure there is. I think basically the job. So when the jobs went out there, it's because of simply because I live in South Lanarkshire. This is where I'm posted. I don't think it needs to be, you know. I mean, there's a young girl that's took up the Edinburgh post. There's someone else in Irvine. There's someone. So it's generally been because of who's applied for the posts. But it's not specific to the areas, no. And if there's issues in other areas, listen, we're more than willing to help. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear, because luckily enough, I sent on the details of all your contact information to public health and to our vaccination teams, and said let's try and link in with the community health workers and see what we can do together. So I'm so glad you said that, because otherwise I might have found myself in a bit of bother by putting us all forward, you know.
No, I'm hoping to cross over to North Lanarkshire very soon. So yeah.
Well, keep going to Fife. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. We'll be in touch then.
Thank you.
We also have Chris McCarroll. I think you were next.
Everybody, thanks for having us on. Thanks for the presentation as well. It was really, really informative. Gillian, you obviously mentioned at the start, you were talking about some stats about mental health, suicide rates 6 times higher, high rates of anxiety, depression. It's a question really for yourself, Virginia. Do you feel there's maybe barriers that we as a kind of mental health kind of service can maybe try and break down as well, or is there maybe a kind of engagement problem there? Like, do people in the Gypsy Roma Traveller community feel uneasy maybe talking about mental health problems? That's really what my question was.
I think you just nailed it, Chris, because within the community it's such a taboo subject, mental health. You know, it's I suppose it's like that in lots of communities, and it's something that we're hoping to overcome, you know, in the years and the time coming forward. But we have an alarmingly high rate of suicide at the minute, especially with our young people. So it's you know, it's alarming. I actually have a personal experience. My own daughter's best friend took her own life in February. So it was a horrendous time for my own daughter. So it's, as I said, it's something, you know, that it's a very big area that from my perspective, you know, something needs to move, something needs to open up, because it's getting, you know, that it's lots of people, you know, how like maybe nobody knows somebody that's committed suicide, or nobody has a connection to that. Do you know what I mean? And for myself personally, I have a connection to that. In more than one area, do you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily resources. It's a bit of a closed subject within the community. So it's something that we need to overcome and, you know, speak to people about more. So yeah.
Okay.
That's a bit more information really for you. So it's not necessarily that services aren't coming in and not trying to help. It's that the travellers themselves, it tends to be quite a taboo subject that they won't speak about. So yeah.
That's perfect, Nick. No worries. Thanks for that. And also, my colleague Sarah has had to leave to get home, but she's wondering whereabouts we can actually get blue cards from if we were ever to engage with the communities.
Well, at the minute, we're having a little bit of a. I don't know if Kate's on this. I mean, I'm not sure, but I know she'd commented. So I've just had a box full sent to me from MECOP. And that's something that we're trying to move forward, and you know, we need more of these cards to get them out into the community, to get them out to services, just so that people know their basic rights really. So, but if you want to look up with Gillian or Richard, and I'll come off this meeting, go back to my bosses and say, listen, people have reached out to me, they're asking for the blue cards, can I have more? Do you know what I mean? So, so yeah, thank you.
No worries. Thanks for that.
Just say it's Kate Burton here. I am on the call, but my camera's.
Oh, hi, Kate.
Hi. So just, I don't know if you can see me. So just to say, we are getting a reprint of the blue. So I work with the Scottish Directors of Public Health on Gypsy Travellers. That's my remit. So we are getting more copies of the blue cards out, or printed. So we will be circulating them primarily to Gypsy Travellers themselves, organisations who work with Gypsy Travellers, homeless people, and New Scots as well. So that was who the target group was when we first developed them. So we are getting another 10,000 done at the moment, which will have more than enough, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure then. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate.
I've got Wendy McDougall. You've got your hand up, and then I think after that, Gillian, if we'll take some of the chat as well from the chat box. Over to you, Wendy.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Gilles and Virginia. This is more a reflection than anything else. I had absolutely no doubt how successful and powerful this webinar was going to be. I think you have both showcased the challenges beautifully. And I just hope that, you know, what you've highlighted today ripples through to the decision makers to improve that equity to health and care access. It's been so educational, and, you know, like I think it was Chris that was just on, like he said, you know, this continues to work towards stopping the stigma and the discrimination, being mindful, you know, that this cuts across so many different protected characteristics and health issues, both physical and mental. And yeah, just so educational and powerful, but more a reflection than anything else. So well done. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Wendy. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Reflect away. Gillian, I'll let you pull out a couple of questions that we've had from the chat box.
No bother. Thanks, Richard. There's been loads and loads of comments in the chat box, all very, very positive, you know, about the webinar today. There's been lots of sharing of websites and stuff for more information, which is great. Few questions have been asked. One, Louise Wheeler, how does information about care get shared either geographically or across NHS and care systems? About what? How do the Gypsy travellers get all that information?
I think that's one of the biggest problems, Gillian. A lot of the time they don't get that information. So that's the barriers that we're trying to overcome at the minute. So yeah, how do we get the information out there? And again, back to MECOP, you know, I keep bragging about MECOP, but I think they've done fantastic because they've recognised, you know, how do you get into a community? You raise up people from within that community to do that job. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. Lots of comments regarding about the staggering levels of inequality regarding all the stats that have been shared. Sharon Carmichael has asked, don't know whether Sharon will maybe want to come in or not, but does having a designated health person help? She's a health visitor, or she has a health visitor for the Gypsy travellers, and they had her number, and they would liaise with her when they were in the area, and she would then liaise with the GP on their behalf. So do you think, Virginia, definitely having a health person for them to go to?
Yeah, I think that link to services, you know, that in between person can be, you know, it can be a great asset, can't it? Do you know what I mean? But again, it's travellers tend not to reach out themselves, although they're not, you know, they're not biased to people reaching out to them. Do you know what I mean? So it's they're they are quite a closed community. Do you know what I mean? So it's a lot of people find it hard to gain the trust. Again, historically, you know, Scotland's history with Gypsy travellers, the lack of trust is maybe understandable. When it comes to healthcare and social care and all stuff like that, you know, that kind of stigma has moved on with the travellers because they recognise the wrongdoings, let's just say, then, of the past. You know what I mean? So it became a bit of a stigma with travellers that, you know, they don't want involved with anybody, you know, social work or anything like that there. But now recognising, you know, that social work, you know, isn't a team of people going to come in and, you know, take your kids and send you to prison and all. Do you know what I mean? So it's recognising the differences, Gillian. It's just moving forward for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah. That takes me on nicely. It was specifically after the video, the young traveller. Dominic has said in the comments, you know, like the sign that showed, you know, no Gypsy travellers here, etc. Imagine if somebody put outside their shop, no Black or Asian people allowed. You know, there's an absolute uproar about that. So it should be the same. That shouldn't be allowed for that distinction for the Gypsy travellers. Somebody else also mentioned that it's actually discrimination under the Equalities Act. So you know, a few cases going to court would maybe kind of stop people being as discriminatory against the gypsy travellers. And then there was loads of comments about the blue card. As soon as you started talking about the blue card, is it available only in Scotland, which we've established, yes, it
Kate
is.
has said, yeah.
Yeah. And how is it promoted? Well, yourself and Kate's come on and gave a bit about how that is, and Kate has said there's got to be more coming out. Alison McCrossan did ask a question about what are the main issues for gypsy travellers accessing health and social care in more remote and rural areas.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm not really. Again, it's, you know, most people in rural areas have difficulties, don't they, accessing the services that they need. But I just want to go back a step there, Gillian, were you, about the blue card? Obviously, so Kate said it's only in Scotland. I just want to let you understand that the rights of healthcare are the same in Scotland, England, Ireland, and Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. However, Scotland has found the need to get that out there to their service providers. So that's, you know, for me, it's like, why do we have to keep retraining people on the rights of every minority, every group, everyone in Scotland? Basically, the rights of the people in Scotland are the same for everybody, not just if you live in a house, let's just say. Do you know what I mean? So, but that, as I say, Kate, it is, the blue card it does only work in Scotland, but the rights are the same in England, throughout the UK. Your right of register is the same in the whole of the UK. So, just jumping back and forward a wee bit there.
No, that's fine. So I think there's been lots more put up for you started speaking. So again, just lots of comments. Lots of comments on blue cards. How do people get the blue card? Well, again, that's all been kind of explained. So, as I say, loads of things in the chat box that you'll be able to look at later on. So, loads of comments, and well done, everybody.
I can say, you can look up the blue card. You can look it up online, and it'll give you, like, you can have a web version, like, to have a look at it and see what it says and stuff. So you could print that information off. It's just the same, you know. It is online. The blue card is online somewhere. Don't ask me where or how to get there, but it is definitely online.
Sorry, just as Kate again, just say I've put the link in the chat. So the link to the blue card is in the chat. And I'm happy for my email address to be circulated along with the notes of this meeting as well. So I can send out cards to people. Could I just possibly just say the reason why we've only done it in Scotland is because the GP registration form in England is different to Scotland and Wales. And in Scotland, you're not required to give an address. That's what the guidance states, but in England you are. So England's gypsy travellers will have more problems registering with a GP than we have in Scotland. I would say. Virginia, I don't know what your experience is about that.
Well, obviously, I mean, a lot of people think because I have an English accent, Kate, that I'm actually from England, but I'm not. I've been born and bred in South Lanarkshire. Been here most of my life. But in England, people face the same thing. But I'm sure it's not a legal requirement, Kate. I don't know. That's something I might look into, actually. Because I'm finding that people, you know, from over the border are asking me now stuff because they know about the community health worker job. Do you know what I mean? So, I think it's fantastic because this is just, for me, it's a platform to open up, you know, for people to reach out and to get the services out to the people that need them. So I've enjoyed doing this today, to be honest.
Well, we've more than enjoyed having you with us, Virginia. I think we've all learned something really valuable here today. Gillian, I'm going to give you 10 seconds.
Yeah,
to do. We're at
appreciate
3 o'clock, but you do a quick last
I just wanted
word
to say, having worked with Virginia over the years, we attended networking meetings locally and nationally, and she's always been an amazing advocate for the whole community. But the difference in her confidence since her Meetup post has been amazing. I noticed that it's the first time we chatted in January. So well done. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. I'll just share quickly one of the other community health workers. We were on a meeting last week, and what she said is, I feel absolutely liberated by this job, this position, because I
amazing.
don't feel I need to hide my
Mhm.
that I'm a gypsy traveller. I'm now out there advertising that I'm a gypsy traveller. So I mean, her quote was fantastic, and I totally agree with her. Do you know what I mean? She doesn't feel the need to hide. She's liberated that she can share. I'm a gypsy traveller. I'm in this job, and this is why I'm here. So, thank you, thank you, Gillian.
Thank you.
And thank you so much to both of you, in fact, and to everybody who's shared or taken part in the webinar today. There's been so many comments and useful discussion in the chat box, so I hope you have an opportunity to revisit some of that. I wanted to highlight that we have a short evaluation survey that we do just after every webinar. We like to know what worked well and if there were any challenges that we need to bear in mind for the next time. So if you have 2 minutes to fill it in, honestly, there's 5 questions on it and it's not going to take long, but it really helps us to plan for the future. To say that the next webinar will be in a month's time, so on the 9th of March, we're going to have another webinar, and this time it's about NHS Grampians work engaging with their local communities in building 2 large capital build projects. So again, something about community engagement, but a different slant. So I would like, if you're able to make that and join it, the information is on our website, and it's free to sign up and attend that as well. We're going to share the recording of today's webinar on our website in the next couple of days as soon as we can, and we'll also put as many of those links as we can, both to the videos that we shared or weren't able to share, and also we'll share the information, as Kate said, about the blue card and Kate's contact details if you would like to get in touch with that. If you'd like to get in touch with with Virginia, drop either Gillian or me an email, and we can forward on your inquiry to her as well, and keep this conversation going. And the last thing just to say is that to remind that Gillian had mentioned at the start, we're developing a resource on our website about engaging with Gypsy traveller communities, and that's going to be built up over the next couple of weeks and months. So we'll take the learning from today and incorporate that. So things like statistics and those links and videos that we shared will be part of that. If you've got your own learning or experiences or useful links that you would like to share, please let us know so that we can build as much usefulness into that resource as well. This needs to be something that's practical and of benefit to as many people as possible. But just thank you once again, Gillian and Virginia. It was a great opportunity to hear from you. Thank you for your honesty and your candor, and for sharing very personal stories as well, Virginia. We really appreciate that, and your time being with us all. But thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Gillian and Virginia. It was a great session. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.